It was a chilly winter morning in a small town where the streets were lined with little shops, old buildings with peeling paint, and the scent of freshly baked bread drifting from a nearby bakery. People bustled about, wrapped in scarves and coats, their breath visible in the crisp air. The sky hung low with clouds, threatening snow. Among the crowd, a little girl stood quietly in the corner of a street, her small hands buried in the pockets of a thin sweater that had seen better days. She had long, tangled hair, cheeks flushed from the cold, and eyes that seemed to carry stories far too deep for her young age. But what stood out most wasn't her sweater or the old skirt she wore, it was her bare feet. They were red from the biting cold, toes curled as if trying to find warmth on the freezing pavement. People walked past her, some glancing for just a moment before looking away. A few slowed down, perhaps wondering about her story, but no one stopped. The world has a way of teaching people to look away from discomfort, to convince themselves that someone else will help. Among those walking past was a boy, no older than 9, wearing a school uniform and a faded backpack slung over one shoulder. His name was Sam. His dark hair peeked out from under a woolen cap, and though his own shoes were worn and scuffed, they at least protected him from the cold. He was hurrying down the street, hoping to make it to school before the bell rang, when he noticed her. At first, he just slowed his steps. Something about the sight of her bare feet made his stomach twist. He kept walking, but the image lingered in his mind. Every step he took felt heavier, as if his conscience was tugging at him. He glanced back over his shoulder and saw her again, still standing there, hugging herself for warmth, looking down at the ground as though avoiding the eyes of strangers. Sam's mother had always told him, if you see someone who needs help, and you can do something, even if it's small, do it. Those words echoed in his mind. He stopped, turned around, and walked back toward her. "Hi," he said softly, unsure if she would even answer. She looked up, surprised, her big brown eyes meeting his. "Hi," she replied in a small voice. "Where are your shoes?" he asked gently. She hesitated, biting her lip. "I don't have any," she said finally. Her voice was quiet, almost embarrassed, as if admitting it made her feel smaller. Sam glanced down at his own feet. His shoes weren't much, just a pair of old sneakers with frayed laces, but they were warm enough. He could see her toes trembling from the cold, the skin pale and cracked in places. He felt something inside him tighten. Without saying another word, Sam swung off his backpack, unzipped it, and rummaged inside. He didn't have any extra shoes, but he did have an extra pair of socks that his mom had packed for gym class. They were thick, warm socks, probably the warmest thing he had with him. "Here," he said, pulling them out and holding them toward her. Her eyes widened. "For me?" "Yeah," he nodded. "It's too cold to stand here without anything on your feet." She hesitated again, as if unsure whether she should take them. People sometimes offer things with strings attached, and life had taught her to be cautious. But Sam's face was open and sincere. He wasn't asking for anything, he was just offering warmth. Slowly, she reached out and took the socks, slipping them onto her frozen feet. The relief on her face was immediate, though she tried to hide it. "They're so warm," she whispered, almost to herself. Sam smiled. "Better than nothing, right?" She nodded, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "Thank you." Sam was about to say goodbye when he glanced down the street and noticed a small thrift shop he passed every morning. An idea flashed in his mind. "Wait here," he said quickly. Before she could answer, he took off toward the shop, his backpack bouncing with each step. Inside, he scanned the shelves until he spotted a small bin of used shoes. They were mismatched and worn, but he found a pair that looked like they might fit her pink sneakers with a little flower on the side. They weren't perfect, but they were whole. Sam reached into his pocket and counted the coins money his mom had given him to buy lunch at school. It wasn't much, but it was enough for the shoes. He hesitated for a moment, thinking of the sandwich he'd been looking forward to, then shook his head. He could skip lunch today. When he returned to the girl, she was still there, rubbing her sock-covered feet together. He held out the shoes. "Try these." Her mouth fell open. "You bought these?" "They're not new," he admitted, "but they'll keep your feet warm." For a second, she didn't move. Then she slipped them on, and to both their surprise, they fit almost perfectly. She stood up and took a few steps, her smile growing wider with each one. "They're beautiful," she said softly. "I've never had shoes like these." Sam grinned. "Now you do." She looked at him for a long moment, as if trying to understand why he would do this. "Why are you being so nice to me?" she finally asked. He shrugged. "Because someone should be." Just then, a woman approached them, an older lady carrying a shopping bag. She had been watching from a distance, and though she didn't know either of them, she'd seen enough to understand what had happened. She asked the girl if she had somewhere to go, and when the girl shook her head, the woman's expression softened. "Come with me," the woman said kindly. "We'll get you something warm to eat." The girl glanced at Sam, as if asking if it was okay. He nodded encouragingly. "Go ahead. She seems nice." Before leaving, the girl hugged him. It was a quick, almost shy hug, but it carried more gratitude than words ever could. As she walked away with the woman, Sam felt a strange mix of happiness and sadness. He was glad she had shoes now, glad she wouldn't have to stand barefoot in the cold. But he also knew the world was full of people like her, people who needed help, and too few who stopped to give it. He went to school that day with an empty stomach but a full heart. He didn't tell anyone what he'd done, not his classmates, not even his mom when he got home. But later that evening, as he sat down to dinner, his mother looked at him curiously. "Did you eat at school today?" she asked. He hesitated, then shook his head. "Not really." She frowned. "Why not?" He just smiled a little. "I wasn't that hungry." What Sam didn't know was that someone had taken a photo of him kneeling in front of the girl, helping her put on the shoes. The image had made its way onto social media, shared thousands of times within hours. People from all over the world commented, calling him an inspiration, praising the kindness and empathy that seemed so rare in such a young boy. But Sam didn't care about the likes or the comments. He didn't even know about them until a week later when his teacher showed him. To him, it wasn't about being noticed, it was about doing what felt right in the moment. That simple act, giving up his lunch money for a pair of thrift store shoes, had touched millions of hearts. It reminded people that compassion isn't measured by how much you give, but by the willingness to give it all. And somewhere in the town, on a chilly winter street, a little girl walked a little taller, her feet no longer cold, and her heart warmed by the kindness of a boy who could have just walked away, but didn't. Sometimes, heroes don't wear capes. Sometimes, they wear worn-out sneakers and carry nothing but a backpack and a heart big enough to change the world for someone else.